Hi, happy Wednesday. We're coming to the end of the Gospel of John, and it's almost as if this chapter 21, it was a tag on. Some commentators think that it was. I don't believe it was. I think it was the author, who I believe is Lazarus, as you know, is being very specific about what happened, and very specific, almost in a prophetic way, of how the church is going to behave under the leadership of Jesus, and the possibility of the church shifting in the age of the Holy Spirit, where we are now, from the primacy of the gospel of Peter and the leadership of the Peter in the church, and how as that got old, it began to sort of lead him around, not the other way around. It's interesting. And when I say old, I mean 2,000 years old. And then this shift in the age of the Holy Spirit, and sort of the horizontal, not the hierarchical, vertical relationship with Peter on top and the church hierarchy, but now this new sort of vertical way in which the Holy Spirit moves through the church in the world, like it's doing right now with us online, where this thing doesn't count for too much. What counts is faith and following the Holy Spirit in your heart. That's what Lazarus unveils to us. And he says, don't worry about when it comes, Peter. All right, that's for me to know. And it will come. Your job is to love me and feed my sheep. So we'll get to that in a second. Let me read through this part here. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, which is the Sea of Galilee, and he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter and Thomas, called the twin, and Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, James and John, and two other disciples, one of which was Lazarus. Probably the other was Andrew. Those were the two at the very beginning, right? Andrew and the unnamed disciple Lazarus, who met Jesus, went and followed him. They had been disciples of John the Baptist, and they went to follow Jesus anyway. Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. And they said to him, we will go with you, right? They're following him to be fishers of fish and people. They went out and they got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know it was Jesus. Remember, their heart hadn't been tuned to the reality of the resurrection yet, right? It was open, but not tuned just yet. But Jesus says to them, children, he calls them, they're part of his family. Children, you have no fish, have you? And they answered, no. And he said to them, cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. The disciple whom Jesus loved, he knew, he saw in that miracle, he knew that it was Jesus. He says to Peter, it's the Lord. And Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, and by faith puts on his clothes. He was naked. I don't know why they fished naked. I have no idea why this happened. You write you let me know. Do some research on it. Doesn't much matter. But what he put on his clothes, he jumped into the sea. But the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far off the land. They were only about 100 yards. Again, very typical Lazarus. Very specific about what was going on, right? This is real. He witnessed it. He knew how far they were off the shore. And when they had gone ashore, they saw charcoal fire there, not just any fire, specifically charcoal fire with fish on it and some bread. Jesus says to them, bring some fish that you have caught. So Simon Peter went aboard, and he hauled the net ashore full of large fish, about 153 of them. Why that number? Because that was the number. Right? Lazarus knew it. He was there. How many? 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Because God holds the abundance of God's creation. And Jesus says to them, come and have breakfast. Right? Break the fast of our separation. That's what breakfast means. Jesus could have been there at lunch and he could have been there at dinner, but he was there to break the fast. None of the disciples dared to ask, who are you? Because they knew it was the Lord. Isn't that interesting? When you see God in the world, it's the kind of thing you know deep down at the core of your being. Who? They didn't ask him. And Jesus came and he took bread and he gave it to them. And he did the same with the fish. This is now the third time Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. Communion. This is Jesus instituting Holy Communion. He broke the bread. They knew him in his heart, in their hearts. How awesome was that? So he institutes the resurrection, or the communion, the Eucharist, right? He is there. They know him in his heart. They break the fast of not knowing the Lord together in that very moment. And the seven, in the Gospel of John, he has 7 disciples who were there. The Synoptics, we've talked about this before, has 12. Here we have just 7. And they're there with Jesus at the Sea of Galilee, breaking bread, knowing him in their heart. And so this is what I invite you to consider. How do you know Jesus in Holy Communion? What experience do you have of his presence in your life when that bread is broken and distributed through the abundance of God? What miracles do you see? What abundance do you experience? Because Jesus is breaking the fast with you and me as well. Jesus is traveling with you and me. He is providing for you and me. He is loving both of us. Can't wait to break bread with you again. It'll happen soon, I pray. But until then, know that you're in my prayers. Know that I love you. And peace upon your souls.